So around about 5 or 6 days ago, one of the admins for Hypixel Skyblock created a forum post explaining a new change to attributes. I made a video where we briefly took a look at what is going to change. We took a look through the forum post itself and there were some pretty interesting changes. So if you don't know what has already happened in terms of what these changes are going to be in terms of the attributes, then you should probably watch that video first, as it will give you a bit more of an idea of what's going on. But today I want to focus on kind of what happens from here. What is impacted, and to be honest, there's much more impacted than what meets the eye. Major parts of the game where attributes are already prominent are affected, such as fishing, Cudra, and many more aspects. But for those of you who aren't up to date and haven't watched my previous video, I'll give you a brief overview of what's happening. The current attribute system is going to change. Instead of attributes being locked to pieces of armor, pieces of equipment, or even weapons, a magical power style system will be introduced, where you'll be able to access an attribute menu, where you can select what attributes you want currently active, meaning that god rolls are going to be completely and utterly obsolete. It's important to note that this update hasn't come onto the main server, it's not been on the alpha, it's simply just a forum post that an admin has made. We've come across ideas for Hypixel Skyblock that have gone much further than this in the past and not actually been implemented, so we'll see what happens. Before we go any further, if you are planning on purchasing anything from the Hypixel store, make sure to use code NITRO as it gets yourself 5% off. You should subscribe to the channel. If you watch the videos and you haven't subscribed, please make sure to do so. You should join the Discord server, it's linked in the description of this video. We offer slayers and dungeon carries, so if you need carries or want to carry and make some coins, make sure to join. So first of all, I want to talk about Kuudra. If you've not played Kuudra, then you might not really know how this is relevant. But for majority of people, you'll know that most of the money that you actually obtain through Cudra is not from dropping enrages left and right, but it's through dropping attribute shards or pieces of armor that have attributes on them. Most of your money is probably going to be made in big chunks through god rolls. A god roll is just simply two attributes that roll on a piece of armor that complement each other and basically just are meta, meaning that they will be the most demanded combination of attribute on that certain piece of armor. For instance, the cheapest Magic Find Veteran Crimson Chestplate at the moment is 180 million coins. If you compare that to just the regular cheapest Crimson Chestplate that you can possibly get, that being almost 2 million. And if we take a look at this graph, this is the prices of Crimson Chestplates over the past week, we can see that they're already falling. Of course, it's just been derpy. But before derpy, when it was Paul, I mean, that's kind of irrelevant, our chestplates were about 240 to 250 mil. Right now, they're going for between 175 and 180. And of course, this is because of the news of the change. Now, truth be told, from reading through the forum post, we don't really know what's going to happen with Cudra. Of course, with god rolls still being completely prominent at the moment, prior to the update actually releasing, if it ever will, god rolls are still as useful as they always have been, but of course because of speculation, prices have already started to change. Now, in the forum post, it's outlined that the Cudra loot pool will be changed, so it's just as rewarding as before. Now, the changes to attributes most definitely will decrease the prices of god rolls because there won't actually be any point for them. But just for the regular attributes, we shouldn't really see too much of a change. Unless they somehow become more useful with the attribute menu system, but we don't really know. Well, that begs the question, what could they do to the Cudra loot pool that would make it just as rewarding as the possibility of a god roll? I guess they could make it so you drop higher tier attributes rather than lower tier attributes. Not sure how well that would really work though. And when you think about it, with the current loot pool and the current items they have to work with, it's kind of difficult to see what they could actually do without god rolls to make it just as rewarding. Of course, you've still got your Fatal Tempo, you've still got your Enrager, you've still got your Inferno, you've still got your Die that you could potentially drop. But none of that changes unless they change the drop chances, which will, of course, make them maybe less rare, but then they'll decrease the price. It is a bit of a difficult one. Which makes me think that they could even introduce new loot to Cudra. I mean, that's just complete speculation, but that would be really cool. I definitely know of one person, and probably quite a few more, who would be happy to see a silver lining in this what seems to be a potentially pretty miserable situation for Cudra. While the actual change to attributes to me seems like a pretty good one, I hope they can rectify Cudra and make it just as good for money as it is right now. Because while sure it is really good for money, the barriers for entry are pretty high. And plus it is RNG. Okay, so fishing. Realistically, fishing and combat at the moment are the only real skills that have been properly affected by these attribute changes. That's because, well, attribute armor is basically just used for combat, of course. Other than that, we have attributes on pieces of equipment which mostly contribute towards combat too. But we also have attributes on the lava fishing rods, which makes sense, of course, because they're kind of obtainable through the progression in Crimson Isles. For instance, if we take a look at the best lava fishing rod in the game, the Hellfire Rod, what you're looking at here is a 1010 Godroll Hellfire Rod, currently selling for 630 million coins, which on face value might seem like a ridiculously high price to pay for a fishing rod. Which I agree, it is expensive. However, if we compare this price to what they've been at over the past maybe 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even a month, then you'll see that this is actually cheap. We can see that over the past month, initially they were selling for close to 800, maybe 750, maybe 720. The average price over this time period is around about 730 mil, and at the moment, as we can see on the H, the lowest bid is 630. Of course, this makes perfect sense because, once again, just because it's a fishing rod doesn't mean it can't be a Godroll, which it is. But yeah, so what? It's not a big deal. Same again. Yeah, Godroll's being affected. But if any of you guys have been watching my Dirt to Enrager flipping series, you'll know that I'm pretty fond of flipping magma rods. When magma rods is basically just the baby version of the Inferno Rod, which is the baby version of the Hellfire Rod. These rods usually sell for around about 15 to 16 million coins. At the moment, they're at about 10. Pretty consistently for 10 as well. Now, I think this is partially because there's more awareness of this money-making method basically coming out. And also, it is definitely got to be down to the fact that attributes are, of course, being, well, Godrolls. And in this case, this is also a Godroll, even though it is only 5/5 and it's only on a Magma Rod, it's still a Godroll. And of course, these are going to be made obsolete. So yeah, it's gonna pretty much kill one of my best money-making methods too, which is kind of sad. Now, it's no secret that the main change out of all of this is for Kuudra. Now, I know that in the post they did say that they would be introducing some new loot pool to Cudra, but that's all that we have. So I decided to ask my Discord server what they thought that they could actually implement into Cudra to make it just as profitable as it is now with the God Rolls. Let's say a tier 1 shard is worth 1 XP, tier 3 shards is 4 XP, or tier 4 shards is 8 XP. Probably maxing out your attributes will take like 5 to 10k XP for a single one. Maybe they can make it so Cudra drops more shards and there's compensation. Armor attributes could be converted into XP with extra multipliers for God roll pieces. If I think about it, maybe they'll finally make Enrager obtainable and not just obtainable. The only issue I see with the Enrager being made obtainable rather than obtainable is the fact that the Enrager is useless other than for museum, and if it starts to drop in price a lot, I mean, which it will if it starts to become more obtainable, it's just going to be a very interesting situation. It depends how more obtainable it becomes. It depends how less rare it becomes. I don't know, it's a weird one. They could also add a new sword from Kuudra that could actually be much stronger outside of dungeons, but give it a goddamn ability that does something. Just adding a claymore with 1000 base damage won't make melee any more viable, just more unbalanced. Literally all melee weapons are the exact same, maybe for Bouquet of Lies and Shadow Fury. I completely agree with this. That would be really cool, a good melee weapon with good new abilities. The current attributes for weapons are pretty damn bad, and I agree, if they just made a ridiculously strong weapon, it still doesn't solve the issue of melee just not being good. Kuudra will be dead, no one's going to use that for money. Nah. Or just let Kuudra not be as good as before, it made too much money anyway. I guess Kuudra did make a lot of money, it was solely based on RNG. Other than the essence, which, you know, you could essentially afford to open a key every single time because most of the time you weren't losing money even if you weren't profiting. But I don't know, that's an interesting take. Let me know in the comments if you agree. Does Kuudra make too much money at the moment? I don't know. There's pretty high barriers to entry. They could add burning Kuudra cores and maybe new items, attributes, new armor sets. They could add new armor sets, but here's the thing, they would have to be a lot. But they've got to be really, really good, and they must really be more rare than the current armor sets, because the only reason that the current armor sets seem to be worth so much is because of the attribute rolls on those armor sets, which is going to become, well, kind of obsolete. They will kill it as a money-making method. Maybe that's true. A lot of people actually think this. I'm not 100% sure if I agree with it. I guess time will tell. I don't know what they're going to replace the God rolls with. I don't know. I hope it doesn't. But I guess you can't really argue with this. To be honest, it might happen. Anyway, I want to know what you guys think in the comments. What is going to happen to Kuudra mainly? as a money-making method if this update is actually implemented. Anyway, if you did enjoy today's video, make sure you do leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.